Welcome to Science Friday for September. Come on in if you're here, join us. Hopefully we'll have a few more people joining online. Today we have Emily Tyner, who is the Director of Freshwater Strategy at the University of Wisconsin at Green Bay. But she's here to talk about a new National Estuarine Research Reserve. As usual, if you're with us in person, please enjoy refreshments from the Friends of Oldham Creek. Emily, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thanks very much. Everything sounds good volume-wise, Jen, and looks okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be talking to the group. Next time I'll try to be there in person. Happy to see you guys this way, though. I work for the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. We are the lead, or will be the lead state agency on the Green Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve upon designation. We're currently going through the designation process, so I'll share with you history of this work, why we think this is a good initiative for the Green Bay system, and then some of what our focuses will be in research and education once we get designated. So a bit about the kind of context for who we are and where I work. Okay, so yep, as I said, I work for the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. It's part of the UW, University of Wisconsin system of 13 campuses. And University of Wisconsin-Green Bay has actually 4 different campuses. We are a coastal university with campuses along the Lake Michigan shoreline. I'm based in the Green Bay campus in the city of Green Bay, but we also have some assets in Marinette, in Sheboygan, and Manitowoc. This covers about 420 miles of Lake Michigan shoreline. This coastal Great Lakes presence is one reason that our university was interested in pursuing this designation and bringing a reserve to Green Bay and the Lake Michigan system, because we have so much presence on Lake Michigan, on the Great Lakes coast, and we are looking for ways to enhance our research and education programming just because of this kind of physical location on the water. The university was founded in 1965, and one of the original name monikers for the university was EcoU. I think it was actually a name given to the campus by Newsweek. There was a big focus on early ecological research. Natural sciences and water science was part of the integral programming, and a big focus on understanding the ecology of the Bay of Green Bay. Some of you may know or kind of know some of the legacy history of Green Bay as a heavy industry port. We had a major cleanup of the Fox River, which is the major river tributary that feeds into the Bay of Green Bay. That was from old legacy pollutants, primarily from paper mills and PCBs. And some of the early research on the impact of PCBs on animals and fish and water quality came out of the faculty who founded, some of the founding faculty of the UW Green Bay, focused on nearshore ecology and bird and fish health. So really, we're proud of this EcoU history. And I think for some time, our campus administration has been looking for ways to elevate the water story and make sure that water is a more prominent thing of what we do at the university and more prominent in our research. Green Bay itself is a working waterfront, a working port. There are heavy industry. I think the port has about 2 million tons of cargo that moves through every year. Over 200 ships come through. It's one of the most western ports on the Great Lakes. And that's an important part of the history and the story of Green Bay, and that's a consideration too when we think about what the future of water is for our region. And so how this pulls into the NER and bringing ourselves into the National Estuarine Research Reserve System. In, I think 2016, well, so I should say, but in my position since 2020, but a few years before I got started in 2016, a group out of Door County, which is just north of campus in Green Bay, approached the university with an interest in having the university lead some sort of more visible presence both in Door County and on the water, and to kind of take up the mantle of water research and water education in a more prominent way. Because the university had this eco-U history and had a legacy of research, this was definitely an intriguing suggestion. They received funding from the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program to explore what would it look like to bring some sort of water research storytelling entity to the Bay. And after looking at different projects at different scales, from kind of nature centers to things like a NER designation, they decided that the kind of characteristics of the research reserve system fit the region well, and it would be a good fit for us to pursue. And those characteristics are these a program based in collaboration. There's been a lot of collaboration and collaborative work on restoration of the Green Bay system, research of the Green Bay system, because of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, GLRI, cleanup of the Green Bay area of concern, the Fox River cleanup. And because of that, there's a lot of entities, and there's been a lot of investment in place on the water. Also, that the NER program is non-regulatory. That was a good cultural fit for Northeast Wisconsin, that it doesn't require the purchase of new lands or any new lands by a federal entity. That was also a good kind of cultural fit for our region. And that there's a focus on research and education, which are the kind of main hubs of the work the university is already engaged in. So in 29, so it took a few years of gathering support. One of the first letters of support that we got for the Green Bay NER came from the Oneida Nation, which is close to our campus. The reservation lands are close to our campus. It's a longtime campus supporter. And they wrote a letter directly to NOAA saying this is something that we want for our region. And that left a big impact and was a good opening door for us to pursue the designation. In 2019, Wisconsin's Governor Tony Evers initiated the designation process with a letter to NOAA, and that got the ball rolling. And then I came on in fall of 2020 to lead this effort. And I should have said my position is focused on building partnerships across our campus around water and in our community. This is one of my biggest projects, but this designation is not the only thing I do. But it is a reason that I was hired and brought on to do this work. So we've been working, I've been working focused on this for the last 4 or 5 years now. There's been some ebbs and flows with capacity and like conversations with NOAA, but we're getting close to finishing up the designation. And one thing I want to share that like for context for the rest of this work is that Northeast Wisconsin and the Bay of Green Bay have strong First Nations and tribal presence around us. Tribal communities have lived around the Bay of Green Bay for thousands of years. Really since the last glacier ice age retreat. 2 tribal nations in Wisconsin, the Menominee Nation and the Ho-Chunk Nation, both have their origin stories and ancestral homes around the Bay. The Menominee Nation is at the Menominee River, and the Ho-Chunk Nation is in the Red Banks area north of our campus. And then when the Oneida Nation, which was originally a nation in northern New York, when they resettled or got moved, I should say, to Duck Creek area before they had a present-day reservation, they have been are a tribe that uses resources from the Lower Bay. So that's a big part of our regional history and our identity, and is part of our bringing a NER to the region, is to help celebrate and tell these tribal stories and these origin stories. So I don't need to tell this group, but you guys know what the reserve system is. That it is a place-based program was certainly very appealing to the university and to folks that were here before I got started on this. That partnership, as I mentioned, that's a big part of the legacy of the work that the university has been involved in, is partnerships focused on waters and coastlines. And when I first got started, I liked this phrase. I think I heard folks at NOAA using it, but locally relevant, nationally significant, that that each reserve has capacity and ability to address local ecosystem challenges. In our case, that's going to be issues that probably sound similar to what you guys are dealing with on Lake Erie, but harmful algal blooms, emerging contaminants like PFAS and PFOS, shoreline erosion, the impacts of fluctuating water levels, how the Great Lakes go up and down, and what that means for shoreline infrastructure and homes and properties along the bay. improving water quality for recreational purposes. So kind of a flooding, of course, flooding is a big issue too. These are all concerns that are of local concern to communities and local stakeholders and community officials. And because of the reserve, I'm hoping that, because being part of the reserve system, I anticipate and hope that we'll be able to bring national expertise, research dollars, more collaboration potential to help us address some of these local challenges that are also, we know that other Great Lakes communities and communities across the coastal US face. So that was certainly an appealing prospect about joining the reserve system. This is a list of organizations and names, maybe less meaningful to you guys not being from Northeast Wisconsin, but I put this up here to just show that we've had a really great range of support from the beginning for the designation efforts. All the organizations listed on the top of the slide have been involved on one of 3 different committees that we've had that have guided the designation, from a steering committee that's still active now, we meet monthly, to also we had a site development committee that helped us understand what natural areas to include in the reserve boundaries, and then also a site evaluation committee that ultimately made a recommendation of what natural area sites to include. Because the first 2 years of my work were focused on what natural areas would be included, as the Bay is large public areas of public land, and we needed to think about what kind of focus we were taking with those lands. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But we've done lots of presentations in support of the designation, talked to over 156 groups, 3,000 community members, and have had resolutions of support from lots of our regional partners that we've shared with NOAA. So really demonstrating that there's interest and capacity to bring this to the Northeast Wisconsin. We've also had lots of visitors come and highlight the work of the reserve and the work of our future reserve and what the university already does on the Bay. Just a few weeks ago in July, we hosted Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin. In June of 2 years ago, we hosted our governor and then other officials along the way, including some from NOAA up on the top right picture. And it's been really great to see both local enthusiasm, but also this kind of governor level and federal support for what we're doing here. And it keeps kind of us moving through this process. So from the beginning, one thing that's been very important to both the designation process and thinking about what the future work of the reserve is going to be is a sense of like a holistic approach to what we're doing. That we know that the NERS system is a science-based program based in NOAA, and that's definitely exciting and a good fit for us. And also we want to think about what are the reasons that our communities value Green Bay, value the Great Lakes, feel connected to the Great Lakes, and how do we integrate those elements into the work we're trying to do both now and bringing this Green Bay NER into reality, but also into the future with our future programming. So we have on the screen there is kind of our mission statement for what we want to do with the reserve, connecting generations, kind of thinking about the significance of this working waterfront as a research entity, but also thinking about all the ways that people celebrate and are connected to, recreate on water. And that's translated to some programmatic grants that I've been I received the past few years to do programs that expand the work we do beyond just the research. So for example, I got a Sea Grant award a few years ago where I worked with a professor of music and we created a soundscape of sound recordings from the Bay that we are going to be doing a display or a kind of a performance for coming up this fall of things like bird migration. We have some winter noises. We have people recreating on the Bay. So pieces of this that we're trying to highlight and emphasize about all these different connection points for our communities around water through programs. So what will the Green Bay NER be? It will probably be a lot like Old Woman Creek in that we have natural areas that are going to be part of the reserve that are public lands that have already been public lands for a long time, but we hope to help bring additional attention and access to them. There will be a programmatic focus, similar to you guys. We'll have a teacher on the estuary program. We'll have the system-wide monitoring program, training opportunities, stewardship, things like that. And then down the line, we hope to have some sort of built infrastructure, a visitor and education hub to bring school groups in, have community events, have maybe some aquaria or ways to connect and showcase assets of the Bay, of the Green Bay system and the Great Lakes. So I'm going to try to talk through the natural areas process, how we got to where we are with what areas are going to be included in the NER, and then our thinking on the programmatic focus of the Green Bay system. So the Bay of Green Bay is a large watershed. It's about 16,000 square miles, and there's lots of public lands on the bay. There's also a fair amount of private land on the bay. So we knew we couldn't, when we thought about the natural areas, we wanted to capture different areas of the bay, so not just have it be kind of contained to one area that the university owns, which is just a small piece of property called Point of Sable natural area, but we wanted to encompass these different ecosystems and ecological habitats that characterize what the Bay of Green Bay is. So we did some initial pre-screening of all the public lands in the Green Bay system, and we looked at 4 criteria. We considered is the area publicly owned, or is it owned by a land trust that allows public access? Is the property coastal and estuarian in that there's bidirectional water flow? Part of the Green Bay system lies on the Niagara Escarpment, where it's not estuarian, it's more kind of hard rock face and just hard coastal property, but we were really looking for those wetland and estuary properties that characterize an estuary system. Is the area connected to the estuary in a significant way? So we didn't want to look too far afield for lands, but there should have been some direct water flow connections. And then does the public area that we look at, does it have features that align with what we think makes a reserve? So research capacity, is there a history of educational outreach on the property? And that helped us eliminate things like playgrounds or right-of-ways or dog parks, things like that are public but didn't make sense for inclusion. Ultimately, we had I think we had 9 or 10 complexes that we had our site evaluation committee evaluate. NOAA provides data to help evaluate this process and to help you understand what makes a good reserve property. Plus, we modified those criteria to fit our local Great Lakes and Green Bay context. Ultimately, we settled on what we're calling a multi-component reserve. Oh, and I should say, 2 other thought processes guided our understanding of what areas to include. And this came from our steering committee. And this was the sense that Green Bay has some unique ecological stories to tell or contributions to make. Maybe they kind of fit also with what's happening in Oleman Creek. And we wanted to capture those stories in the areas that we selected so that our research and our education programs could highlight those things. And one of them is that there has been, as I mentioned, really extensive investment in restoration of the Green Bay system, similar to other areas of the Great Lakes, because we have an area of concern. We have that Fox River cleanup. There has just been over $1 billion invested, and there continues to be more. The Green Bay area of concern is one of the oldest AOC designations, and there's still many more millions of dollars being invested. So we wanted to highlight that restoration story, but also recognizing that there still is some very pristine, undisturbed, well, relatively pristine, undisturbed, unimpacted habitats in the northern part of the bay. So we wanted to capture this disturbance gradient that includes both minimally impacted and disturbed habitats in the north of our system. So these are unchannelized rivers, naturally occurring river mouths, mostly rivers that are, for sections of it, that are completely protected in public lands by the Wisconsin DNR. And then that we also have lots of recently restored habitats in the southern part of the bay with diking, water level controls, green infrastructure, and buildup of habitat for fish and wildlife, and that those are important parts of the Green Bay system too, and that by including both of these more undisturbed habitats and these restored habitats, we can do some interesting research comparing and contrasting and across a gradient. So that was an important consideration also. And the second one is that nutrients are a huge driver of what happens in the bay, fish movement, water quality, dead zones, and that the Fox River is a a significant, which comes out of the bay right around here in the lower bay, is a significant contributor of nutrient-rich waters from what's called the Dairy Donut, this agricultural area around the bay. Those nutrient-rich waters mix with relatively low nutrient water coming in from Lake Michigan. So we wanted to include natural areas and wetlands that capture that full range of nutrient water composition, from low nutrient waters from Lake Michigan in the north, meeting very high nutrient waters in the south, and then some of that dilution that's happening as you move up the east shore. So these were some of the guiding gradients that we thought about for site selection. Ultimately, we settled on what I think NOAA calls, and what we're calling, a multi-component reserve, where there's three non-contiguous relatively large areas of lands and waters that will comprise the natural areas of the Green Bay NER. This includes the Peshtigo River, which is primarily owned by the Wisconsin DNR. Again, really undisturbed, beautiful wetland habitat in the north of our bay. We have a lower bay component, which is a combination of many public property owners, lots more restoration, urban setting, and land use pressures along the lower part of the bay. Also, it includes properties on the west shore of our bay and the east shore, and these we're trying to symbolically reconnect by calling them the lower bay. At one time, all of the lower bay was one big wetland marshland property, or wetland marshland habitat before the city of Green Bay was developed and highway infrastructure was put in. So we're trying to at least symbolically reconnect them into one type of system down here. And then we have a bit of property up in Sturgeon Bay, which is at the base of Door County. This includes, well, one reason we included them is to have some different types of watersheds, smaller watersheds than what you find on our west shore of our bay. Also, this helps us connect to visitor populations and resident populations that travel through Sturgeon Bay to get up to Door County for summer tourism and winter tourism. All in all, it's about 37,000 acres of land and waters. 10,000 of those are land, 27,000 are open water. So it's a significant area. Very little of it is actually owned by the university. Actually, I'll pull up our screen. We have, I think, 10 different land holding partners that are going to be part of this effort. The largest by far is the Wisconsin DNR. They own and manage 80% of the lands that will be part of the reserve. The university only owns about 191 acres at a natural area property near our campus. So as I'm learning, as I work on our management plan, it's bringing together lots of partners, has many benefits in that you have a lot of expertise in the room. It's a good convening force for thinking about attacking invasive species problems or coordinated management, but it is a lot of people and organizations to kind of work through and work with as you're making decisions. So this will be, I think, exciting for us to have so many partners at the table, but lots of lessons that we still have to learn along the way. So a bit of zooming in on these properties. As I mentioned, we have this northern property, this Peshtigo property, primarily Wisconsin DNR managed. The black areas are some private inholder lands that are part of those that are not part of the reserve. We've included some of our boundaries out into the bay to capture those nearshore ecosystems and nearshore processes that are ecologically important that we might want to include in our research programs. Our lower bay component on the left has a variety of landowners. It's non-contiguous property. There's an area that's blacked out down here. This is an interesting part of the Green Bay story. It's called Cat Island. This is an island, it's a restoration project of what historically was a barrier island system called Cat Island. In the late 60s, I think early 70s, a combination of high water levels and storm events and winter ice eventually eroded down these islands and they disappeared. When those islands disappeared, it changed some of the ecology of the lower bay, as there was not as much barrier protecting heavy winter winds and storm action from influencing the aquatic vegetation in the lower bay. And we saw over a decade retreatment of this aquatic vegetation. But since about 15 years ago or so, There's been a combined effort from the Port of Green Bay, the Army Corps of Engineer, which needs to dredge this. There's a cutout right here. That's a shipping channel that runs through the lower bay. They needed a place to put their clean dredge spoil. So there's been an effort to essentially rebuild these islands, this island chain, to both have a place to put dredge spoils and also to recreate this ecologically important barrier island in the lower bay. One of the earliest deposits of dredge material happened to be really fine grained sand, which is not actually what you find in most of the bay sediment, but that happened to be what was deposited first. And almost immediately, parts of this island chain that are being redeveloped attracted piping plovers, as you may know, Great Lakes endangered species, and now there's consistently nesting pairs of piping plovers year after year. Almost any bird that you can find in the Great Lakes either migrates through or uses Cat Island as a nesting habitat, even while it's an ongoing restoration project. So while it's not part of the future Green Bay NER now, when the restoration is complete, which is about 2050 or so, then that will become part of the reserve's boundaries. But it is a really interesting ecological story that also has benefits economically for the Green Bay Port and for the Army Corps. And then finally, our last property up in Sturgeon Bay has two different land trusts have land in there. And it also includes a unique feature. There is a salmon, an area where the Wisconsin DNR collects salmon eggs during the salmon run in the fall. And those eggs are used in hatcheries to grow new salmon. So it will be a good education, I think, component will be to have some education focus on the value and importance of the salmon fishery and the hatchery to the Green Bay system. So these are our natural areas, and yeah, you can see like lots of diversity and habitat. Well, you can't tell that from here, but there is diversity in habitat, diversity in partners that will become part of the reserve. Okay, I want to talk now about partnerships and what we're thinking about for kind of our programmatic focus of the reserve. And one thing that I think is important that I like to try to emphasize is that although I just talked about boundaries and areas that were included and not included, like Old Woman Creek, I imagine, our programmatic footprint will be large. We really want to encompass the whole kind of Northeast Wisconsin and the Green Bay watershed. As I mentioned, it's a large watershed. And so we'd want to not restrict our partnerships and capacity and programming to just those landowning partners, but to any school group or nonprofit or agency that wants to work with us and that we've been collaborating with over the last few years. So like the other 30 reserves in the system. Oh, and I'm going to pause and say that at least for now, the Green Bay Reserve NER will be the representative reserve for the Lake Michigan, Lake Huron biogeographic region. I think NOAA anticipates bringing on at least one or two other Great Lakes NERs in the future, but for now, we'll be the one for Lake Michigan, certainly maybe Lake Huron. And with that in mind, we are trying to think of research programs and collaborations that speak to not only the ecology of Green Bay, but also have relevance and lessons to be learned for other estuary systems, both on Lake Michigan and across the Great Lakes. So we will, like Old Woman Creek, will be participating in the system-wide monitoring program. Just a few weeks ago, we got word from the Great Lakes Observing System that we're going to get some initial funding to purchase some of the equipment that we'll need for the program to do like some of the SONs and the weather monitoring equipment. Your reserve and your staff were helpful in us thinking about what kind of equipment we need. And this will build off work our university already does on water quality monitoring in the lower bay. In the education realm, we'll be participating in the Teachers on the Estuary program and also building off some existing programming that I'll mention that we already do. We have a kind of a waters and wetlands outreach program. In stewardship, restoration is a huge priority for our system and our partners. So we do want to take a kind of a focus with that, both because the Green Bay area of concern, I think most projects will be wrapped up by about 2030, 2031. And while there's some federal dollars to do do some long-term monitoring. It doesn't cover the range of monitoring needs. Like, for example, there's not really a plan in place to do plankton monitoring, to do much submerged aquatic vegetation monitoring. So if funding supports and allows it, we like the reserve to be able to pick up and do some of that post area of concern monitoring work that maybe you won't get supported in other ways. We also have done recent work both on seeding, planting, and then this past week harvesting wild rice, and have an education program in schools around wild rice. We want to integrate that into the NER, under the NERS umbrella. And then finally for training, we're kind of still figuring out what the niche is in our region around training. Again, this restoration focus has been identified by partners as something that would be helpful, potentially developing like a community of practice or some training, professional training around restoration for practitioners in the region who do restoration but haven't gotten some of the Great Lakes training that would be helpful. So we're still exploring what that sector might look like for us. So now I want to share some of the current programs, mostly education programs, that we hope to bring under the Green Bay NER umbrella. I'm hoping that there's, in the same way that Old Woman Creek collaborates with Lake Superior NER, that there's areas for collaboration in some of these programs or some of our training opportunities in the future. And we're very excited to be joining two other really well-established and reserves that are very important in their community, and hope those are, and see you guys as really good models for community integration as well. So waters and wetlands outreach is important for our campus and our campus leadership and our education program staff at a university. It's been supported for some years now by Ducks Unlimited, our DNR, Fish and Wildlife Service. I have a dual appointment with University of Wisconsin Extension to really integrate into the extension program across our state. And then there's a newish entity in Wisconsin called the Freshwater Collaborative of Wisconsin, which brings together all the campuses, the 13 UW system campuses that do water programming. And they've been a huge supporter, funding-wise, in supporting our education programs. Our goal with our education programs that we hope to eventually bring all under the reserve is connecting people to wetlands and water. We also have a pretty big focus on this K-12 to career pipeline around water. We're introducing K through 12 students pretty early on to the type of technical expertise that you might need to have a career in water science, what a career in water science could look like locally across our state, what field experiences are like for people in these careers, and then helping educators, both classroom and other forms of educators, have the resources they need to integrate water and wetlands into their learning spaces through curriculum development and field trips and supplies and trainings like that. As I mentioned, we have this program that we are really proud of called Wild Rice in the Classroom that's been sponsored by Ducks Unlimited and our Freshwater Collaborative. This connects classrooms around the Green Bay system with us to provide some training and gear, like mostly grow lights, buckets, and seed to grow wild rice in the winter months in their classroom. The past few days, including right now while I'm talking to you, is the first year that we've ever tried to harvest our own wild rice. Like in the past, the seed for this program came from lakes in northern Minnesota. But we have a new staff member this year who's focused on tribal engagement, and he really led us in an initiative this year to harvest our own seed. And Monday, the first day of Wednesday, they collected 40 pounds of seed, which is almost as much as we buy every year from communities in northern Minnesota. So we're hoping we have enough seed this year to really get this program going in more schools across our region. So over the winter, classrooms grow wild rice, and then we do programming with them that connects the historical context for wild rice, tribal significance, the ecological history, the food sovereignty connections to it, and then we have them come out with us in the fall and do some seeding. Well, I should say in the spring, they transplant the seed that they grew, the plant they grew in the classroom, they transplant it into some of our partner natural area lands. And then in the next few weeks in the winter, right before it starts to be ice over on the bay, they'll come out and do some seeding with us to reseed areas of the bay with wild rice. This is an ongoing both education program and an restoration ecological research program, because some areas of the bay have done really well with the seeding efforts, and some there's just too much pressures from water quality issues and fluctuating water levels and grazing pressure by ducks and geese that rice hasn't done well. So we have a monitoring program to assess the success of seeded rice across the bay, and we've been working more recently to bring in high school students and college students to help us do some of that wild rice monitoring. And I say we because the project team of this is quite large. We have, well, relatively large. We have 5 or 6 folks that work on this grant with me in all these different education programs, plus lots of partners across our region, Ducks Unlimited, Wisconsin DNR, who help with seeding, with harvesting, and with evaluation of restoration success. And a bit, I'm not sure how much you guys know about Monument wild rice, but it's existed at least around the Bay of Green Bay for really millennia. It's been an important part of Indigenous diets and Indigenous plantings and creation stories. There are tribal regulations on harvest and processing. It's an important indicator species of water quality, as we talked about. There's food connections, and then there's these restoration and monitoring parts of it that we're working on now. So while the program originally started as an ecological monitoring program, we have been in recent years bringing in more of this kind of cultural, historical context, both to the research we're doing and to the teaching that we do around it with schools. Another long-term program that will bring under the NER umbrella is something called our Lower Fox River Watershed Monitoring Program. This is a 23-year program, and it actually came about from the litigation around between the paper mills and I think the state around cleanup of the Fox River because of pollution that came off, PCB pollution that came off of paper mills. Part of the litigation stipulated that money had to be spent both for cleanup, but also for education and educational capacity and educational training programs. So a lot of that money was directed to the university about 23 years ago. And that helped found what we're calling this Lower Fox River Watershed Monitoring Program. Now we have about 13 schools, some of them that have been with us for a decade plus, that have responsibility for monitoring 2 or 3 times a year impaired streams in the Lower Fox River, which is part of the Fox River system. We provide training to the teachers and go out with them for these exercises, and the gear is all coming from us. And then the data is going into a long-term data set that we keep on the quality of these impaired streams. This is a great program because it's been a gateway to connecting with educators and their students to feed into other programs and classes at our campus. And excited that we just got some initial support, 6 more years of support to keep the program going. One of the former teachers on the program now works with me part-time as the coordinator of this program. So she really knows, understands classrooms, understands the logistics of getting students out to field sites, how you need substitutes and you need to have buses. And she's kind of great at running the program now that she's been on both sides of it. And then this program, although the focus is really on middle and early high school students, has been a feeder to one of our newer programs, which I'm really proud of. It's our high school freshwater research program. This provides paid field and research experience for high school students to do hands-on learning across the summer. This is another connection point of linking field trips and research that students do in the kind of K through middle school to eventually hopefully going on to study water science or thinking about a career in water science in a professional capacity. And we had our 4th cohort this past summer. We grew from 2 students in 2022. We had 15 students this past summer. We had 64 students apply to the program, and we're mostly just limited by host sites. We don't really have enough partners to host the students, and enough funding to pay them. So I'm hoping to grow the program year after year and always looking for new host sites. This is another program that I've really loved working on and hope to bring to other parts of our state, potentially region, collaborating with other entities, other states that want to or maybe already doing high school programs like this to think about shared ways of doing professional development and training and preparing students for potentially having a career in the water sector across the Great Lakes. So this has been a great program for us. Okay, then circling back to what the NER is going to do from a kind of research and education focus, our steering committee defined these 4 priority coastal management issues. And I was telling Jenna right before this, I was working on our management plan. That's our last big document that we need to finish up to move ourselves forward in the designation and completing this designation of bringing the Green Bay into reality. And so these 4 priorities are what underpins most of our plans for the Green Bay NER, and I'll talk through them. So the first one is to help prepare Great Lakes communities for long-term ecosystem change and variability. I imagine this is of relevance and connection to you guys as well. This reflects that the Great Lakes go up and down, but then there's also increased pressure from climate change with those natural fluctuations. We have a legacy of flooding in urban areas in the Green Bay, in the city of Green Bay, challenges with keeping infrastructure going in harbors and marinas because of these changes in Great Lakes water levels. So being able to bring expertise from maybe outside of our own system to help our communities plan for water level changes and the impacts with climate change is the big priority for us. The Nature Conservancy is a big partner here. We have the East River, which is a river in the Green Bay area. They have a collaborative system where they're focused on helping municipalities do planning around flooding, and we hope to partner with them on their efforts there. Our second one is restoring these sustainable land-water connections. There's been, over time, of course, lots of urban development in the lower part of the bay and into Sturgeon Bay, and a disconnect in many places between the land and water with parking lots and pavement and culverts and other infrastructure. So we want to help support regional efforts to reconnect those land-water connections, and also from an education perspective, helping our communities see and understand that things up in the watershed have these connections to the bay. Ideally, we'd host some hikes that walk along watersheds that can kind of show areas where there's been disconnection, where there's been reconnection, and what it means and the importance of having those connections for migratory species. Northern pike is a big species in the lower bay that needs that land-water migratory corridor to be open. So that's a big priority for us. A third one is thinking about biodiversity, and especially amid all this restoration, is how we keep biodiversity, improve ecological integrity and ecosystem resiliency while you have this, in the face of aquatic invasive species, which is a big problem for the lower bay. You have land-based pressures, but you also have all this active restoration project. And this is the area I see a lot of our restoration monitoring and adaptive management fitting in. And then finally, and this is maybe where I personally have the most connection to, just with my history of Great Lakes education, is thinking about and thinking of ways to enhance the Bay of Green Bay's connection to quality of life, to workforce development, to sense of place and connection with the people and communities around the Bay. For a very long time, the Bay of Green Bay, as I think not most, but some Great Lakes cities have been really disconnected. Like the city was built away, so it's facing away from the Bay. The Bay was a site to dump pollution. It was stinky. The water quality was not good. And so there hadn't been really a sense of wanting to be connected to the Bay by communities. And because of that, in the lower Bay, there's really no public infrastructure. There's like almost no restaurants. There's no place to just like get a hamburger and a beer and watch the sunset. No place to go fishing. Historically, there was a swimming beach there, but that's impaired now because of harmful algal blooms. So helping both the university be a leader on this, connecting with the city of Green Bay, Brown County. There's some industry that wants to be more engaged in shoreline redevelopment. So helping to kind of provide that convening space to think about connection and quality of life and reconnection to the bay. Really, unless you have a boat and you can take your boat into the northern part of the bay where the water quality is better, there's no kind of good way to swim or to access the bay for the residents, the 500,000 Brown County residents that live in the lower part of the bay. So this is a big challenge, but we want to help and contribute to some sort of sense of like reconnection and community connection and kid connection to like shorelines and to built infrastructure and boardwalks and fishing piers and kayak launches and just those things that help communities be more connected to their waterways. So that's our kind of fourth human dimension to this work. And we know that the Green Bay Reserve will function best if it helps fill in gaps of what's either totally missing or help shepherd work already in action with people time and resources and expertise derived from the other reserves in the system and NOAA and federal partners. So we hope that we can help be that convening force for what's already been really active and great partnerships in the region, but maybe elevating them a bit with the additional assets and opportunities that come with being part of the reserve system. So I've been working on this since 2020. Our big milestone, we had one big milestone in 2024, early last year, where NOAA accepted those nominated natural area sites. Since then, we've been working on our environmental impact statement. We provided that to NOAA last December of 2024, and then now I've been finishing up the management plan in partnership with our steering committee and all of our land owning partners to write that document. I hope to send it to NOAA end of this month, early October, and from there it will go through a pretty extensive review process. Ultimately, our goal is to be designated by the end of next year, although that is subject to just personnel and capacity at NOAA to move our designation documents through, and then getting final approval all the way up to the top of NOAA. And then hopefully we'll have capacity to have funding, and funding will come from federal appropriations for us to hire and get started with bringing people on maybe about a year and a half from now or so. So it's been a long road, but we've had lots of community support along the way, and we're really eager to be part of the NER system and to be joining Old Woman Creek and the Lake Superior NER and representing the estuaries across the Great Lakes. So the last slide I'll share is that we have a project website. The website address is down there. It connects you to a newsletter if you want to just stay updated on how we're doing. I'm sure you can hear through Jen, but also if you want to hear from us directly, I invite you to sign up for our newsletter, and we send out maybe quarterly or twice yearly updates on progress and programs that we're offering. Okay, I think I'll pause there, stop there, and I can take questions or just if anyone has comments for us about the system.
Thank you, Emily. That was really informative, and I liked seeing all the pictures of places I haven't been but hope to visit soon. Any questions? I can always repeat if you can't hear. Any questions for Emily?
Well, I have a question for you, Jen, to ask your audience if you are up for it.
Have at it.
So I'm curious for the folks in the room and community members around Old Woman Creek. As community members, what have you found to be a really valuable resource or asset or opportunity that your reserve is bringing and that we might replicate in the Green Bay system?
What do you think? So we do have a couple of folks in the room that have been here since the beginning.
Oh, wow.
And then we've had some that have joined us along the way. So what do we think?
I do like, I have been working with the citizen science programs that are offered. So we do a variety of getting out in the marshes and monitoring for them, which as a retiree, we have the time and we always enjoy getting out there. So those programs have been very helpful for us, and I'm hoping that we're doing some good for the reserve also, and using the education opportunities out there.
Yeah, we have a very dedicated set of citizen scientists. Several of our birders are in the room, but they do multiple orders too, not just avians. And that's a joint program that's been in the training program and is now helmed in stewardship and research to make sure that we're utilizing the data that we're getting from all of these volunteers that go out all throughout the year, even in the cold times. Looked like we had
a good one.
Yeah, all hours.
yes, and all hours of the day because they do frog watch too.
Oh yeah, those are early mornings usually, right?
Frog watch is nighttime.
Nighttime.
Yes, so they do get to see the reserve when nobody else gets to see it. Yeah, Steve.
I thought your open water boundaries were interesting. They look like they were gerrymandered. Just interested in how you guys, how those were derived.
Oh, the boundaries that go into the water, is you're asking about that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's interesting that you asked that because that we've had some back and forth on that with NOAA and our partners. Ultimately, we just followed depth gradients there, like kind of near shore depth gradients, but also tried to work around like where we know there's some fishing restrictions and other restrictions around like use and trying to keep it so it's close to the near shore. Those are a little bit still in flux as we go through the environmental impact statement process because we've gotten some feedback on those boundaries. But in the end, it was just kind of keeping it to the near shore was our goal. And there's as you can see, it's a lot shorter in the northern part of the bay than it is in the southern part of the bay because it's very shallow for most of the lower bay. But we had to cut out the shipping channel just because we had some concern over like regulatory issues and crossing a shipping channel.
And then your component on the east, it looked like it was in a small bay. Is that connected to Lake Michigan there too?
Oh, our Sturgeon Bay property?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, yes, it is. And that was one of the reasons. Oh, here it is right here. Well, that's it zoomed in, but zoomed out, it's right here. And it has a very small amount of Lake Michigan beach. So we went against our kind of own guidance here because this is part of we wanted to keep a continuous property that's owned by a land trust. This isn't exactly estuary, it's more beach habitat. I mean, it is beach, but it's not in the same way that the rest of our West Shore is estuarine. But it was important for us to have that small amount of Great Lakes beach habitat. There's some special like species of concern located on that property. And then also we wanted to have some connection with broader Lake Michigan.
How are you going to figure out where to have a visitor center?
Oh my gosh. So I have been working on this a lot since about 5 years ago. And that, of course, is like the most interested people is where the visitor center is going, because there's a lot of political interest in that because of the potential for it to be like an economic driver, or what people imagine it will be or could be. So at first, the focus was kind of all around the whole. Sorry, I'm going to show you our whole bay. We were looking at all properties. Over time, although we haven't quite shared this publicly yet, so don't please share it with any Green Bay folks, but over time we have really narrowed it down to probably to be around our lower bay, both because that's a heavy population center, because our campus is down here, so we already have like labs and wet and dry labs, and our boats are all stored here, so logistically it makes sense. But where it's going to be within the lower bay is the next question, because Brown County, the county that the university sits in, is really eager, I think, to leverage other coastal development off of a built-in, like off of a visitor center. So yeah, it's ultimately going to be our chancellor's decision, but it's going to be probably in conversation with the county and the city. But somewhere on the bay and likely in the lower bay, so it's close to our campus. But it's hard, and I think there'll be some unhappy folks in other parts of the bay.
How long does it take, like if you're driving by car, to get from the upper bay to the lower bay?
Good question. This is about an hour. Well, it's an hour to come my office on campus, which is just around here, to get to the mouth of the Peshtigo River. And then our campus here to Sturgeon Bay is about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So that was also considered, like you guys understand, like if you have to go fix the sand, if our headquarters was here and then we had to go fix something near shore
Yeah.
here that we have, like that's a pretty far drive.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Emily. Yes, we're excited to add to the family.
Yes, I'm so excited to be joining you guys. And I've met and worked with Oldham Creek staff at some meetings and had calls with Steve about, I think, or emails with him about gear and equipment for system-wide monitoring programs. So I've always really enjoyed working with you guys so far in small capacity, and I really look forward to much more collaboration in the future.
Well, thank you again. And I just want to remind everyone else that our last Science Friday of the year will be October 3rd. And we will be having Jeff Pugh, who is a former member of the Cleveland Water Alliance, talking about monitoring water quality along the lakeshore of Lake Erie and beyond. All right. Again, thank you, Emily. Everybody have a great Friday and enjoy that fall weather out there.